let's go back out to our Shimon Prokupecz right outside the courthouse in New York City, where Luigi Mangione confirms he is prepared to plead guilty. Tell us more, Shimon.
Okay, so I'm going to just bring it to you right now from inside the courtroom. Mangione has begun speaking, and here we go. After years of enduring pain from a broken back and witnessing similar experiences of others, he said he learned United Healthcare would be holding its annual investor conference in December 2024. He said the public location wasn't posted, but he researched to learn the location and who would be there. This is him now in court speaking to the judge in this allocution. This is the part for the judge to decide whether or not she is going to accept this plea. And he's now describing in his own words how he was stalking United CEO Healthcare Brian Thompson, saying that he learned of where he was going to be, and that after years of enduring pain from a broken back and witnessing similar experiences of others, he researched where Brian Thompson would be at an investor conference in Manhattan in 2024. Brian Thompson's family seated, Pamela, in the front row. They are crying, is what our reporter Kara Scannell is telling us. What a moment for that family to come face to face. It breaks my heart because they have been so silent and they have not said anything throughout this whole ordeal. And to see their loved one to be murdered in this way, and now the man responsible for it standing up in court for them will be excuses. And none of this is going to make sense. To hear him explain why he did what he did, and we have heard this from Luigi Mangione before during the investigation of this, where he was having issues with his back. But for this family to sit there and listen to this, and he's now, here we go, Pam, again, he says to the judge, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died.
Wow.
He concluded by saying, I knew what I was doing was illegal. Again, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died. I knew what I was doing was illegal. That family is sitting in that courtroom listening to this.
Wow.
Again, he admits now, in his own words, to stalking Brian Thompson. He says that in November of 2024, that he traveled, Luigi Mangione telling the judge, I traveled from outside of New York State to Manhattan. So he came from outside of New York. I emailed United Healthcare leadership. Wow. So this don't think I've heard this. I don't remember ever hearing this. I then emailed United Healthcare leadership, Luigi Mangione saying that he emailed United Healthcare leadership posing as an investor at a firm managing over $15 billion in assets, and requested information about the conference.
Wow.
Unlike my previous interactions with insurers, he received an immediate response within an hour. And that is how he learned where Brian Thompson would be on the morning he would execute him. So this really even highlights more. I have not heard that either, Pam. This is new information, and obviously this all came up during the NYPD and the FBI's investigation when they were probably going through his computer and his phone and his email. But this is just so striking that he emailed, this is how long he had been planning this. And this tells you his frame of mind, that he emailed United Healthcare leadership saying, posing as a $15 billion manager of an investment fund to learn where he was.
I just want to go to Areva on some of this information coming out of the courtroom today from Luigi Mangione. For the first time, I'm learning, and Shimon said he hadn't heard it as well, that Luigi Mangione posed as an investor with a firm and just reached out via email to the insurance company and then received a response within an hour. And that is what helped lead him to Brian Thompson, where he said, I shot him and he died. I knew what I did was illegal. Wow, Areva.
Yeah, that's a shocking detail, Pam. I remember early on when this case came to light, when all of the publicity, we had all the reports, and I just remember the people who were supporting Mangione, who were glorifying what he did, who were making him out to be some kind of martyr. And it was really sickening at that time. And now to hear the deception involved, how he found out about that meeting, which was otherwise not a public meeting, that individuals who had not been invited wouldn't have even had access to that CEO. And he used, he posed as this manager of this large fund to get that information and then to stalk Brian Thompson, to show up at that meeting, to shoot him in broad daylight on a street in Manhattan, just makes the nature of this crime even more heinous. And I just hope all those people who somehow thought that this was an act of courage now understand what a heinous act of cowardness this was. Again, my heart goes out to the family that had to hear this, but hopefully this begins some kind of closure for them. That sentencing hearing that will take place in December will give them an opportunity to present impact statements and to talk about how horrific the loss of Mr. Thompson has been for this family. Again, we talk about the state court. At this point, Pamela, you can only imagine that this is about where he's going to serve time, because it is clear that he is going to get a life sentence, whether it's from this federal court or if he is convicted in state court. And the lawyers are jockeying now to determine, does that life sentence happen in a federal prison or in a state prison? But certain that he is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, as he should, for the admission that he just made in that courtroom today.
All right, Michael Smerconish is actually standing by and wants to get in this conversation. Michael, what are your thoughts?
I want to follow up something Areva said about the perverse nature, the way in which some have received this horrific murder. On 54th Street, where this transpired, the hotel where Brian Thompson spent his last night is a hotel where I would often stay when working for SiriusXM and CNN. And I remember being on that block in the immediate aftermath, 2 or 3 days later. What was surreal is the fact that there were no candles. There were no flowers. There was no memorial for Brian Thompson. And what I remember is that on a telephone pole that was adjacent to the murder scene, I saw something that depicted Luigi Mangione as a saint. You might remember that there were wanted posters that were then put up in that neighborhood for other corporate leaders. And all of the glamour and panache that has surrounded this man, I just find twisted and tragic. And I can only hope that the way in which now he has just articulated exactly what he did is going to change minds, maybe not, but of those people that have glamorized this killer. I can say killer now without any fear of contradiction because of what he has said. And one other observation I'd make is what a sin that we all couldn't watch. There ought to be cameras in courtrooms all across the United States, including federal courtrooms and including the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah, I am with you on that, Michael Smerconish. Our Kara Scannell just came outside of that courtroom. Kara, you were there for every second of what went down. Tell us about it.
Well, Pamela, Luigi Mangione was led into the courtroom. He's wearing a beige prison outfit, escorted by 2 U.S. Marshals, where he sat down between his attorneys. The judge went through the process asking him if he understood his rights, if he had taken any medication, if he was under any medical care. All of his answers were crisp and clear, someone who was definitely in control and aware of what was going on today. And then when she started to ask him the specifics of his guilty plea, to explain what he had done that was wrong, Mangione chose to stay seated and he started to read from a piece of paper. The judge actually stopped him and asked him to slow down because he was going too quickly through it. But a few things that stood out to me from what he said is he started it by saying, after years of enduring severe pain for a broken back, navigating obstacles in the healthcare system. So underscoring again what his motive here in this case is. And he walked through it saying another thing, he's underscoring what he had previously written about in those writings, the greed of the healthcare industry. He said he had emailed United Healthcare's leadership trying to find out about the specific location of the investor conference where he was targeting Brian Thompson. He said he claimed to have $50 billion in assets. And he said, like, unlike his other previous interactions with the healthcare industry, he got a response immediately within an hour. Then he went on to explain that he had made a gun using a 3D printer, that he had obtained a silencer, and then he said he traveled to New York with the intent to shoot Brian Thompson. He said, I knew what I was doing was illegal. He did not say it was wrong.
Defense attorneys are now at the microphones. Let's listen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Friedman Agnifilo, and I represent Luigi Mangione. Today is a solemn and significant day. With today's guilty plea, Mr. Mangione has accepted full responsibility for the death of Brian Thompson, arising from the events of December 4th, 2024, outside of the United Healthcare Investor Conference here in Midtown Manhattan. It was a single tragic event, yet he's being prosecuted twice for the same conduct. As Luigi explained in court today, he endured years of severe, debilitating pain following a broken back while struggling to navigate our healthcare and health insurance systems. Like the thousands of people who have reached out since this tragedy to share their own experiences, he believed that the system had failed him and destroyed his life. Despite this being a single isolated event, Mr. Mangione has been unfairly treated since the outset in every way and has successfully fought off terrorism charges and the death penalty, while also fighting at the same time two simultaneous prosecutions in two jurisdictions who are trying to punish him twice for the exact conduct. He's been treated differently from every other defendant charged with this offense in New York. However, thankfully, New York law does not allow this. New York law does not permit a person to be prosecuted and punished twice for the exact same crime under a statute that governs successive prosecutions. It's also known as the double jeopardy law. Today's guilty plea triggers this statute, and we just filed our motion in state court explaining why the state charges must be dismissed under New York's double jeopardy protections. We will not be taking any other questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, let me go back to Kara and Shimon. I do want to talk about some of the details of what Luigi Mangione admitted in court, but just to explain what we just heard from his attorneys, Kara, and you have been talking about this, one of the reasons why they decided to go ahead and have this plea deal is so that the charges in New York State could be dropped because of what's known as the double jeopardy law in New York State.
That's right, Dana. That was one of the objectives today by Luigi Mangione's team. He was being charged both federally and in state court, and the state trial was set to begin on September 8th. But under New York's double jeopardy law, someone can't be prosecuted for the same crime twice. So that is why we saw this quick, fast-moving plea deal being reached just a few days after the final pretrial conference earlier this week, leading to Mangione pleading guilty. Now, as you heard his lawyer say, they filed a motion to get the state charges dismissed. The state prosecution has not responded to that yet, although throughout this entire case, they have been saying that they think they did the legwork on this, they did the investigation, they caught Mangione, and they wanted to bring this case to justice. So we will wait and see what their reaction is going to be in court. We can expect them to probably try to fight this. It will be up to the judge overseeing the state case to make that decision, and then sides could appeal. But it does look like the state trial set for September 8th will likely be delayed as this is all figured out. But these are still a lot of moving targets, Dana.
Okay.